Well, this is Steve Ridgel, and as most of you know, I live in Texas, and I grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so I spent a lot of years being a Dallas Cowboy fan. And of course, they got beat the other day in the wild card game. And I don't know that anybody was really surprised. I mean, there are people that are saying, oh, this was our year, and I thought we were going to the Super Bowl, and yes, we were good enough, and yes, they should have had a chance to, but as my wife pointed out, you can't possibly be surprised they're going to blow this game. And of course, they played terrible and they lost. And I listen to people talk about, well, here's the problem. I mean, they say we've got to get better players. Now, you know that can't happen next year. We're losing a lot of players and we can't replace them all because, well, we've got salary cap issues. Horrible decisions, and not Dak Prescott. That's just the cost of doing business in the NFL. If you get a good quarterback, you have to pay him like a very good quarterback. If you got a quarterback who's really kind of very good, you have to pay him as if he's elite. Dak Prescott's one of the top 12 quarterbacks in the NFL. He's not good enough to win a Super Bowl, I don't think. But there are probably 20 teams that would take Dak tomorrow. So it is what it is. Ezekiel Elliott, that's a problem contract. Nobody in the NFL except Jerry Jones gives contracts to running backs and especially second contracts. And Jalen Smith was a horrible decision. Everybody in the NFL knew he couldn't play anymore, but we gave him a big contract, then cut him, and everybody else cuts him because he can't do it. We'll get better coaches. We're not going to get a better coach. A good coach is not going to coach for Jerry Jones. He's just not, because you don't have any authority. You're constantly undermined. You tell your player one thing and Granddaddy Jones will tell him something else. It's just the way it is. And it's Jerry's money, by the way. But here is the problem with the Cowboys, why they will never win. I'm 70 years old. I don't expect to see them win in my lifetime because they've got a culture problem. That's really the issue with the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, listen, after every game they lose, excuse after excuse after excuse. Even Dak, who was kind of the leader of the Cowboys, the fans were throwing things at us. How horrible. Oh, wait, they were throwing things at the official? Good for them, because the officials didn't mess up that last play. It may or may not have been a good call, but the problem was Dak didn't know to hand the ball to the judge that has to place it. Okay, you know what? I'm not sure I knew that rule. I'm not sure I would have known that rule. That's not to blame Dak. But it is to say we've got to quit blaming the officials. I lined up off sides. Well, the officials should never have called that. Well, of course they should have. Because we just aren't very disciplined. Because that team, Jerry Jones, is not disciplined. And when you don't have any discipline, and probably some of that comes back to accountability. There's a culture of no accountability. Jerry ain't accountable for anything. He's never made a mistake. A lot of money, a lot of power. It would look on the outside like three things matter to Jerry Jones: making money, having power, and winning. I do think Jerry Jones wants to win, but I also think having power is very important to him. And so he's going to make the call on who stays and who goes and who gets the big contract. And as long as he does, we're not going to be very good. And money's really important to Jerry Jones. Now, before you say it wouldn't be to me, well, of course it would. Jerry made a lot of money and he bought the Cowboys, and good for him, do what you want to. But there is no accountability in the Dallas Cowboys. Even as a player, you make a mistake, Granddaddy Jones will get you out of it. It's just no accountability, no discipline, and a team that makes a lot of excuses. Cowboys are never going to be much better. They are what they are. Now, the good news is, for the next 10 years, they'll make the playoffs about half the time, and about every third time they'll win the first game. Never going to be any better, probably not going to be any worse. So it kind of is what it is, but I've seen a lot of large organizations, and all of them ultimately develop a culture. Some football franchises have a culture that wins. The Cowboys are not one of those.